Hi to people on Zoom. We're very excited to have this kind of very engaging talk with Regalado Trota Jose. We're very honored to have him here with us. Let me just briefly introduce Ricky Jose. Regalado Trota Jose studied anthropology and Philippine studies, major in art history at the University of the Philippines. During his studies, he also performed with the UP Madrigal Singers in local and international concerts. He helped establish ICOMOS Philippines and the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines Episcopal Commission for the Cultural Heritage of the Church. He has published books and articles on Philippine churches, books, church bells, 19th century parish priests, Philippine art in Spain, and Ivory sculpture. And his book, Simbahan, was given the National Book Award for Art History in 1992. In 1999, Jose was recognized by the Cultural Center of the Philippines as one of the 100 Filipinos who helped build the Filipino nation through art and culture during the last 100 years. He has worked with numerous local public and private organizations such as the Ayala Museum, the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and the Philippine National Historical Society. Jose was the archivist of the University of Santo Tomas from 2010 to 2021. He continues his advocacies as an independent researcher. So tonight actually is very special. As you may know, we just recently concluded a Philippine Studies Conference on the British invasion of Manila and Cavite 2 days ago. But we wrote Ricky Jose here now because this talk is really kind of supported by the SOAS-supported Mapping Philippine Material Culture. This is a global visual inventory of Philippine material culture in overseas collections. So we know from the work of Ricky Jose in 1995 that he had gone around Spain, and he will talk about this more. But we thought we would tap into his encyclopedic mind, so we can also hopefully work with him as we try to add a very huge gap actually in our inventory, this global inventory. We have very little from Spain. So we thought that it would be great that if we can work together with Sir Ricky on this one. So without much ado, I will hand over the mic or the podium to Ricky.
Thank you for coming over here, and thank you for hosting me. This is always like a work in progress, and there are so many things you have to do. Okay, let me. Oh, okay. I included the part about the Madrigal Singers because I'd like to show that we are not just writers, but we,
You might have to stand
I meant to stand up. That we are writers, not and cultural bearers and workers, and so we don't just live lives writing, but we also do enrich our lives with performing. I'm selling this thing right now. With the Madrigal Singers, we sit down while we perform, and then one time, Mrs. Veneracion told me, "Oh, Ricky, stand up now," and I told her, "I am standing up." Okay. So the performing with the Madrigal Singers has also helped form our personalities, and one of the speakers of the conference today, Nina Baker, was also a performer of the Bayanihan dancers. So it always enriches one to, as you write, you also do some artwork, whether painting or performing. Okay. I've divided this talk into two parts, but they're like 10 short sections into two parts. And so in the middle, we will stop for a short break. This is how to get to
the arrow.
yeah. Okay. So for the first part, I'll have the introduction, and then objects on Philippine objects about natural history, then ethnographic and domestic objects and weapons and military artifacts. Then we have the break, and then the second part, we will have textiles, precious metals, works on paper, paintings, sculpture, and ivories. And then we'll have a short presentation of what is really there. There's so much there. So how did they get started? And then major collections and helpful persons. This work took several years. As I said, it's a work in progress. And I didn't start right off with looking for Philippine art in Spain. It was rather a slow process. And that's always the lessons I give, among the lessons I give to my students, that this is a cumulative process. It takes years to do. So, okay. In 1977, that was my first meeting with Dr. Maria Lourdes de Azechuelo. She is considered the pioneer or the grandmother of Philippine studies in Spain. And she wrote a very important book on Spanish architecture in the Philippines, published in Seville in 1959. And she gave a lecture in UP in 1977. So she was already my idol at the time. And I went to that lecture and I invited her to have dinner with us at home. Maybe you maybe remember that.
No, I was 7 years old.
So I dared, it's like you go to Athena and then, Athena, can you have dinner with us? And then I said that I know nothing of Spanish. And she said, well, I know nothing of English. So we got along in that dinner. We became friends after that. Then in 1981, that was my first time in Spain, and we performing with the Madrigal singers, and so that also gave us a little moving around in Spain, especially in Madrid. And in 1992, that was the big research grant. The Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs was giving out research grants, and I dared to apply with the topic looking for Philippine art in Spanish museums. So they gave me the full 3-month grant, and that was a time to be really in Spain because they were celebrating the 500th anniversary of the arrival of Spaniards in America, the Encuentro de dos Mundos, and Madrid was culture capital, and Barcelona was hosting the Olympics. So that was really the time for anybody interested in this kind of studies to be in Spain. And I got the grant. They gave me the grant on February 14. It's very nice. This is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Madrid, near the main plaza there. And then in 1996, the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs had a project on the documentation of Philippine art in the rest of the world. And I was the one assigned to go back to Spain. And that project was headed by Marian Roses, who I know has also helped to do the mapping project here at SOAS. So I was there for about 2.5 months in Spain, and I'll recount to you the things that I found during that time. The mass of the work that I found between 1992 and 1996 came out in this big book called Discovering Philippine Art in Spain, published by the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs. Then one small things came out one after the other. There was a conference in Cadiz. I went for a few days there, and then another conference in Ibiza and Baleares. and then in Granada. And then I took another leap of faith and I proposed to the study course on the sources of vice-regal art that's the art of Mexico and Latin America during the Spanish period, shall we say. And I found some interesting things there also. And then just in 2019, we had a research project with the Philippine UP History Department. So in each of these short trips, there's always something new that is happening. And I renew friendships made during all these years. So this is just a map of Spain. I began my attack on Spain by understanding the geography, the political geography, and identifying which are the principal administrative regions and what are the capitals of these regions. And so I was able to, through time, visit all the administrative regions and the capitals of each. There are about 50 plus provinces in Spain, so I visited most of them, including here in the Balearic Islands, and here in Africa, there are 2 provinces that are on the African coast. The major collection of the major reason for many Philippine objects reaching Spain was the Exposición de Filipinas in 1887, which was housed in the newly built Palacio de Cristal, the Crystal Palace in Retiro Park in Madrid. And they published a catalog of about 800 pages containing what were the Philippine things there. So that's a very important guide for us because many of the objects that I found later on can be correlated to this catalog. The catalog is also available online. This is how the Palacio de Cristal looked like with the Philippine objects. And of course, this would not pass a curator's, present-day curator's plan, no? These days, you don't jump back the exhibition with these things. So this is really the 19th century way of displaying things. And also like here now. So some of these are the paintings of Juan Luna and Hidalgo. And we have been able to locate some of them later on. NCC, shells. It was a jumble. Works of commerce such as abaca rope, textiles, silver and gold, architectural models, paintings, they were all mixed up. Here are 2 sample pages of the catalog to show you that even looking at the catalog, you can get a lot of ideas. The name of the exhibitor, the provenance of the items, the name of the object, if it's a painting or a work of art. So this is the kind of work I give to my students to try to introduce them to the Spanish language. Because this is very easy. It's a catalog, Una Mesa de Madera, for example. And I tell them, my assignment is for them to choose a topic from the catalog, like women artists or photography or wood from the provinces or anything that comes from Albay. They just have to rummage through the entire catalog and then they can prepare a paper about that. And so that's the initial introduction to Spanish. I always tell them you can't really do Philippine studies without going to learn, at least to read Spanish. So many of the objects from the exposition ended up in the Anthropology Museum in Madrid. And so they have regular exhibitions. This was in 1996. Then they also published catalogs. So these are collector's items now. This is the first floor. Almost the entire first floor of the Anthropology Museum is dedicated to the Philippines. There's this huge log canoe, and each glass cabinet here has something about the Philippines. So that's a major. You can do Philippine studies without going to the Anthropology Museum in Madrid. Then the Army Museum, Museo del Ejército, used to be in Madrid, next to the Prado. But in recent years, it has been transferred to Toledo. So I don't know how it looks like now in Toledo. These are what I have, what I saw in 1992. So these are typical, again, the ways that they display things, kind of jumbled. And things from the Philippines are mixed with other things from other countries, like Polynesia or the Carolinas Islands, or Cuba, or parts of Latin America. And they don't distinguish between military and domestic functions. So here you have some bowls out of coconut, and you have different instruments and some bladed weapons. And here's cannon, and here more bladed weapons. And here's a flag of the Katipunan. I'll show you later some details. And shields. So it's really based on a 19th century aesthetic. And I don't know how they have reset the exhibition in Toledo. And it's called the Museo de America, but there are many Philippine things in Museo de America. And precisely because they are Philippine things and they do not jive with the name of the museum, they are mostly kept in storage. I was only able to find out just by curiosity, and I said, I want to see Museo de America. With a letter from the Ministry of Foreign, Department of Foreign Affairs from Manila, I was able to visit these collections, and then they opened up to me. The Anthropology Museum in Barcelona, Ethnographic, also has some things which came from the Madrid 1887 exposition. And they also have published very interesting catalogs. One thing to consider, not all the collections are of historical sources, because up to today they accept donations from private collectors. So this catalog was issued upon the donation in the 1990s of a private collection of ethnographic objects. So that kind of leads to considerations on the historical sources of the items. And this teeny-weeny museum is hardly known, but and you have to take a train ride out of Barcelona. Vilanova de Geltrú is a teeny-weeny town. But when I went to this museum, they had at least 6 Juan Luna paintings. Fabulous, and they're not all displayed. I had to go to the bodega. And I think now they are more famous. Rito Balaguer was a personal friend of Juan Luna, and so he got some paintings from Juan Luna there. Then in Santillana del Mar in Cantabria, there's a diocesan museum where we have large Philippine ivories, and even this umbrella is said to come from the Philippines. So in this sort of setup, you will see, again, works of art of different materials, of different functions, just placed together with very little interpretation, shall we say. And this is the National Library in Madrid. And so they have important works on paper, which I will show you. And I must say that the librarians here are very friendly. My first time here, I was so intimidated. Oh my gosh, this is where Cervantes and all these important writers are here. And then you approach this grand stairway with all the statues there. But my fears were put aside by the very friendly librarians, even if my Spanish is really broken. Of course, the Archivo General de Indias in Seville. One thing good here is that they have a very efficient digital service. So a lot of the materials have already been uploaded on the web. The religious orders also have their own collections, but then they don't have the funding given to the state collections. So you really have to go to each one and visit them and wish they were better equipped and assisted. So the Augustinians in Valladolid, this is the most famous collection of any of the religious orders that work in the Philippines. In fact, here you have the Santo Niño, the Holy Child of Cebu. wedged here. And this street is called Avenida de Filipina. So these are old pictures of the museum in Valladolid, and before they fixed it up, and then when they put up the natural history collections, and they still continue collecting. So this is a recently acquired Hidalgo painting in Valladolid. So the Dominicans have their museum in Avila, in the monastery of Santo Tomas, which is a very historic building. It's a UNESCO heritage site. The Franciscans have their archives in this part of it. It's a part of this complex. This is the San Francisco El Grande, huge Franciscan church, but the entrance to the archives is this small door here. So you have to go there, not here. And I'm going to show you a shocking picture. This is myself in 1992.
So young.
With the Franciscans, Antonio Abad, the historian, and Archivist Cayetano Sanchez, who has written a lot of Philippine things which we hardly know about. And when I was here in 1992, they were so excited about my coming. Father Cayetano had been parish priest of Forbes Park, San Antonio Forbes Park. So he was there during the Marcos years. And so he knew very much about the political situation. And so my first day there was just all talking about how was the Philippines. And then after that, he said, come back tomorrow. So that's typical, you had to really have the rapport with those who are taking care of the archives. And this one, I'm just putting it here because on that first day, they showed me this item, and they were asking me if I knew about it, and they didn't know it was Filipino or not. So I'm showing it also to the larger audience. You might be familiar with this. The design looks something like Mindanao, but I'm not too sure. So
A grape marker.
yeah, but it's very small.
It's very small.
You can see the knife compared to it. So that when you go to these museums, your idea of Philippine art and objects will change, because there are many things which you have never seen before. You do not know if it is the last form of art that survived, or it has been misclassified, or it's something from another country and then labeled as Filipino, or it came from China and passed through the Philippines, and that's why it's called Philippine. So there are all these varieties of considerations when you do your research. Again, this was also in 1992. This is Maria Lourdes Diaz Echuelo, and this is her student, Antonio Garcia Basolo. So it's interesting to see the transfer of culture and education. So she is a pioneer, and then she taught in Seville, and then one of her prime pupils was Antonio Garcia Basolo, who teaches in Cordoba. And I also dared to present a paper, to present a stripe production in Antonio's class in Cordoba. The diapositives, right? Ganyan. So also my very poor Spanish, but then they made me feel better with a hefty lunch in Cordoba. So from meeting Antonio Garcia Basolo, I met him also in 2019. He has also introduced me to his younger students. So you see the passing of the knowledge. And so Philippine studies in Spain is very slow, where you can count the people who are doing it, but it's very important then to know who they are. These are items in Diaz Echuelo's house in Seville. She had relatives in the 19th century in the Philippines, and so this is what she inherited. So I went to her house once, and up her apartment in the Jewish section of Seville, and she showed me these things. This is me here taking the picture of this ivory crucifix. This is Margarita Estrella Marcos, who did the most important work on ivories in the Philippines. So that's why we have basis for classifying works of art as Filipino or Phil-Hispanic or Hispano-Filipino because of the work that Margarita Estrella Marcos did. This is her dissertation in Madrid was about the Ivory Baroque ivory culture sculpture in Spain, and that was published in 2 volumes there. And these are the major sources for looking for Philippine ivories. And then she wrote another one sponsored by a Mexican collector, this one. So using these books, I said, if there are Philippine ivories in this church, maybe there are other things of Philippine sources or Philippine materials other than ivories. So that was my basic thinking. And the way that Margarita Estrella Marcos worked on her dissertation, she told me, is that she went through the rich collection in the Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, the high research center there. They have a whole library of catalogs of works of art in Spain. So she looked at each of these catalogs and looked for what were provenance as Philippine, or they had pictures also. So very important work is the documentation of each town of what they have, and Spain has done that very well. And while I was in Spain, I was also always a guest at the home of the historian Antonio Molina, and this is his wife and Nancy, his daughter. And recently, I have also made friends with the young Filipinos in Spain, Pedro Luengo in Seville, and Anelit Gutierrez in Granada. So this is, as I said, the continuing work. So you see here, I have now white hair. Just 2 years ago. Okay, so let's go to the sections one by one. And natural history, this is the collection of natural history in Avila. And many of the things here are Philippine, but not most of the things here are from the Philippines. Some of them are from Australia. Apparently, when they were setting up the museum, they wrote to other countries from the other Dominican order, Dominican missions to send them items for the museum. The same thing happened also in the UST collection in Manila. We know that when they were putting up the museum in the 19th century, they also asked for the Dominican missionaries to send them stuffed animals such as kiwis, and I think there's also a moa there, or some birds from Australia. So this is taken in 1992, and this is taken 3 years ago. They kind of cleaned up the exhibitions. And what is very surprising, and I never really imagined, was to find shells in Taclobo, this large 3-tacna gigas, which are used as holy water founts, and you find them in so many places in Spain. So in the Cathedral of Cadiz, you find these, and in the Church of San Ildefonso in Seville also. The interesting thing in this Taclobo is that they have been smoothed and polished. So some time was taken to work on these gigas. Then in the Basilica of Our Lady of Montserrat in Barcelona, as you go to the approach altar in the Camarin, and I was really floored to see these shells. And then they have the brass markers there saying Manila 1887. So that's really proof that they came from Manila. At the same time that the exposition was held in Madrid. So when you go up, you find one shell, and when you go down, there's another shell. So I would call this a kneeling down moment. When you encounter such a thing, you didn't notice there, and then you feel like kneeling down in reverence because it's here. I had many kneeling down moments. So here in Pontevedra, in the northwestern part of Spain, you have the shell donated by Castro Mendez Nunez. You know that he was in the Philippines in 1855 to 1862 before he went to his naval victories in Callao in Peru. Then in Ibiza, there were three shells, taclobos. And in the Basque Country, I found 4 in the Cathedral of San Sebastian in Gipuzkoa. And in Vitoria, there was 1 taclobo. So you must think that if there is a taclobo, then there could be other things from the Philippines somewhere in the church. This one is really interesting. The Sanctuary of Our Lady of the Montaña in Cáceres, which is also on the western border with Portugal. I had just an hour and a half waiting for the bus, and I said, okay, let's kill time. There's a church on the hill. Let's go to the hill. So I walked up to that church, and there was a kneeling moment. There was this clam, and it said here that these clams were given by Genaro Palacios and his wife. For those of you who don't know Genaro Palacios, he's the architect of San Sebastian Church in Manila. So there's a direct relation here. After he left Manila, he resumed work in Spain. So he must have brought these shells with him to Spain. And this very old church in Burgos, San Gil, I also found taclobos. And sure enough, in the museum in San Gil, there were other things that they said came from the Philippines. And you'll see them later. And the 1887 exposition had also samples of wood sharpened like this, like pencils, and they had collections of these. And these were kept at, these are still kept at the Anthropology Museum. I've been trying to convince my students to specialize on certain forms of art. So one of my students went to study wood. He's now become the expert on Philippine wood based on the wood that is collected in the Anthropology Museum. So let's go to the next section, ethnographic and domestic objects. Of course, the biggest collection is in the Anthropology Museum. And you have this kind of refined bulol or bulol-like sculptures. One of the directors of the Anthropology Museum wrote a very interesting article about these bulols and bulol-like objects. But she noticed that in the European collections, they are smooth and well-defined in sculpture. Whereas if you go to the field in the Cordillera, they are very rough, no polish, and the features are barely suggested. So she theorized that the people in the Cordillera got wise to the Europeans coming over to collect these bulols, and they found that the Europeans like polished objects. Therefore, they commercialized their art and sold it to the Europeans. And so you have the Europeans displaying them as an exotic art, when actually it was art that they did so that it could be sold to the Europeans. And I think in the British Museum, there are also these smooth bulols. So I think that's interesting to see how each side, the purchaser and the artist made a killing on each other.
This was so early, no, 1887.
1880s, yeah. And here, what you call tipos del país in the round, or country types carved also by the Mountain Province. In the Ivory Museum, you find them all over the several museums. And in the Anthropology Museum, there are so many exquisite objects that were made to show, say, the Spanish civilizing influence on the Philippines, using shell, coconut, carabao horn, bamboo. These are very, very intricately carved bamboo containers for tobacco and documents, and intricately ladles out of coconut. Sometimes you find these on the Madrid antique market, these bamboo tubes, but they're very rare. Earthenware these kinds of things you don't see anywhere. And some model hearths and beautiful coconut shell tea sets with silver fittings. You also find a similar set in the Museo de America. They also have miniatures of daily life, such as the Cariton, the Carabao, and other things. And several kinds of fish traps, baskets. This is a fiambrera for our picnic. And one thing also to consider is that sometimes the items are not as old as they seem. So you have these two items here, which were donated by the National Commission for Culture and the Arts in about 1991, I guess as goodwill gifts. And this one, but in particular, has a shell on the cover. And you do not see this anywhere in Philippine traditional art. So that's again something to consider, that new things will be included in the old exhibitions. So you have to really find out what are the provenances of those objects. Some of them are very beautiful, like these intricate mats and horse mounts, and more miniatures of Philippine everyday objects. Sailing vessels, the champa, the casco, the bangka, and elaborate kinds of headgear, and also rainwear. This one, for example, with the horse hair, you can find this in engravings of the period. And this one with silver fittings also. This is from the puffer fish. And this one I found is lovely. A bakya wooden shoe signed by F. Ocampo, made in Binyan in 1887 also. So of course, we never see this kind of art from anywhere. And models of houses. And these are models of houses also in the Army Museum made by the Military Corps. This is a tomb marker from Sulu in the now in the Anthropology Museum. You have to also understand the development of museums there, because the Anthropology Museum used to be called the Museo Nacional de Antología. And before that, it was the Museo de Ultramar, of the overseas. So because of our project with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I was able to get copies of the accession records. So this helps you to understand the source of the items and when did they arrive in the collection. This is one of those objects I was saying that they say was made came from the Philippines, but we're not too sure if it's really Philippine made or did it arrive in Spain via the Philippines. This is in the Church of San Gil where they had the Taclobo. And we have some horse mountings here from the Army Museum. This one is made of leather, wood leather, which the caption says, try to copy Hungarian work. This is a page of the catalog in the Museo Ethnographic in Barcelona of the Mindanao work. So again, some of it comes from the 1887 exposition, and some of it came as recent donations. So my point is that complicates our study of Philippine art. You have to know when they arrived, because you have to know also when is the dating of the object. So this is one of the major collections in Spain, weapons and military artifacts. I will go through how they are displayed, and then through various types of the braided weapons, the lantacas, which are the cannon, and then the coats of mail. This is in the Museo Naval, the Naval Museum. So that is the way of display the various kinds of shields. These are from the north. These are Mindanao and Sulu. So unless you know them really well, you won't really, they won't really make an impression on you because you just ask everything. But the captions are small, so you really, with the great number of objects, you will be, you won't appreciate the entire collection. So in the glass cases, you see all kinds of bladed weapons from different parts of the Philippines.
Is that an armor? Yung one.
This one, yes. This is the, yeah,
Made of what?
These are brass rings. There are different kinds: brass rings, carabao horn, brass plates. They're very precious. So again, a section of the Museo Naval, mainly Philippine things here. Here are some lantakas. I got another coat of mail with a helmet, a model of a ship that was used in Cavite, I think. And this is all. Most of these come from the Philippines. Even ships that were made in the Philippines or saw action in the Philippines. But as you can see, there's really no story. It just shows you souvenirs of the Navy in the Philippines. And this is also typical. There are in the Army Museum all shields of all kinds and lances and spears of all kinds. And here you see the bladed weapons. So you may know the souvenirs in the Philippines called weapons of Morolandia. So this is the ancestor. Here's another corner of the exhibition there. So it's really just to show you number of objects, but no story about the significance of these objects or where they came from. The sources are not very clear here in the captions. Of course, here's another coat of mail. Of course, when it was moved to Toledo, I don't know how they have curated the exhibitions. If you're doing work on the Mindanao missions of the Augustinian Recollects, you have to go to Marsilia in Navarra, and they have a small museum there also for weapons and another coat of mail. This, I don't know, this looks like steel. They're rather heavy. There was one in the Ayala Museum, and I wore one. It's really heavy. I don't know how you can fight with this. You must really be strong, a strong person. One of these was used by Amarsolo in one of his historical paintings. So these are, again, all kinds of weapons and implements and knives in the Provincial Museum in Cadiz. You can see here, these are campilans from Mindanao and Sulu, but these are access from the Cordillera. Actually, military museums are all over Spain. So when you see a military museum, try to get there because you are bound to find Philippine things there also, not just defensive material. So this is in La Coruña, in the northern part of Spain. And you find here two kinds of weapons which I didn't know anything about. This is the Gran Podadera, or a pruning. The Spanish is pruning tool, but I don't know if this is a pruning. It looks like a big lance. And this is a multi-pointed lance, which the description says here is used for catching monkeys. So rather unusual. And these are the details. They really have a lot of these campilans. So they are begging for study because of the different kinds here. I don't think even in the Philippines you'll find an exhibition of these materials. So they are better displayed out of the country, especially in Spain, with some captions. This is a collection of weapons donated by a private family to the Coruña Museum. you know, the military tradition is a very proud tradition in Spain. So these military museums are very, very important in Spain, as well as here in the UK. But they tell a lot, and it's up to you to find out what is there. In La Coruña, there's also this small castle. You may know about the Malaspina expedition in 1792. That was like the Spanish version of Darwin's Beagle voyage. Malaspina went around the world, collected many artifacts. When he came back to Spain, he ran afoul of the king and was imprisoned here in Casillo de San Anton. And inside, there's also a military museum. So I went here, and another coat of mail and some armor. These don't really pertain to Malaspina. They just put them here because since it's a fort, they would put some military items here. So that's a close-up. This one is Carabao horn with chain mail, brass rings, and some ornaments. And it is a very ornamental helmet. I don't know how much of this was really used in the war. I have an idea that some of it was made as for ceremonial purposes or even as gifts among themselves. So here again, some more, you know, even just studying the handles of these weapons is really will be a major study in itself. Because there are so many of them. In the Anthropology Museum, here you have another set of coats of mail, and this is made of a kind of horn also. It's kind of translucent. Again here. So the general idea is of defense or fighting, but you would wish that there were some other visuals to show you how they use the weapons, or some stories about the weapons. So here. And lantakas. Lantakas are the cannon, suelo cannon on the boats. And when I paid my ticket at the Army Museum on this side, then I turned around and there was this grand stairway lined with Philippine lantakas. And so this gave me several kneeling moments. May I kneel in front of you? More so because they were labeled with the name of the battle where they were taken from and the year. So super, super historical. And you do not see any of this in Manila. For example, Maimbong, 1887, that's Maimbong, Sulu. And Marawi, 1895, Holo, 1851. And look at how fine the decorations are on this. So the first time I saw this in 1992, I felt like crying because I was thinking, who among us can see these things? I felt privileged to see these things, but I wanted to share this with others.
Were those made in Mindanao?
We don't know. There's a book by Mr. Miyay about and Fe Mangahas about lantakas. So much of it could have been, some of it could have come from Brunei, or some could have come from local foundries which we haven't really identified yet, somewhere in Sulu and Mindanao. Although we know that cannon was being cast in Manila in the 18th century and earlier. So if they were doing that in Manila, so in Mindanao. Because in Mindanao they would melt the church bells that they captured to make them into cannon. So here you see even these twisted bodies here, you know, very, very beautifully done. And some of them have brass plates indicating the date and the place where it was taken. And you even have double-barreled lantakas. So this will look like gift items or prestige items. And one of our colleagues, Annabel Gallop, who saw these pictures, sent me more pictures of these double-barreled lantaka in Venice. similar to this. So I don't know if they're Filipino or how did they get there?
They're very elaborate.
Very, very elaborate. It is really all the more touching because we don't know about these things. I'm showing some of these also to other Filipinos based in Spain, and they never knew that there were these things in Spain. Kasi hindi nagpupunta sa museum. Hindi na alam nila, pero meron palang ganyan. We really should be a museum-going people. Is that too much to ask for? So because of the project with the Department of Foreign Affairs in 1996 for the preparation of the Philippine Centennial, I was able to get almost like carte blanche to visit the records of the Army Museum in Madrid. And so they allowed me to make photocopies of the catalog of their Philippine collection. So this is just a page of the Philippine section, and they have a bamboo canon here wrapped in rattan. And you see each lantaka in each canon has a long description with the source, whatever they could find, the measurements, the stories about this, and any kind of information that they could put. And this is published. Again, this is published in the 1950s in large books like this, like 5 or 6 volumes.
All from the Philippines?
No, the entire collection. But they showed me the Philippine section. So my point is also where in the Philippines do we have this kind of scholarship? Of course, we cannot do the scholarship if the items are not there. So we have to go to Spain and do the study there. And you have to learn Spanish to be able to communicate with the people there. This is the list of Philippine items that was generated by the computer in the Army Museum. So you can see it's lantakas, spears, coats of mail, all kinds of things. They're not classified by function. So this is just one page of the several pages of their catalog that they gave to me. Okay, so bladed weapons, you've seen a lot of that already, but here again, so they take up, they were given a lot of space per weapon. Some are of ivory or of precious metal. Very well crafted. These are the Sulu variety. Those are like cockatoo heads. And then you see, I was also able to get copies of their catalog, the accession records. And there's this one that says, may have been from the Malaspina expedition. So that, if it's true, that could date from about the 1790s. It could be one of the oldest that we know of. And take note, it's in the Museo de America. And being Museo de America, they're not on display. So this is the Anthropology Museum, and that just to give you an idea of the amount of campilans they have behind the heater. I was allowed to go to the storage, and they really told me it's really disorganized because they really lack a lot of space. This seems to be a funeral marker. I'm not sure.
Which one? Which object? The big one?
This one. This one.
I can't see your.
We can't see.
We can't actually see.
I see your pointer.
We can't see.
Oh,
your
sorry.
mouse.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
I think it's
okay.
this
The lower,
The black
the
thing on the
the
right.
black one on the lower right.
Oh,
Well, I didn't know that marker.
It's a grave marker, no, Sulu?
Looks like it looks like. You know, there was so much, and I didn't have all the time to examine all the objects. So I hope in my sharing this with the large audience, some other people will pick it up and go from there.
I hope they're not storing those campilans like that now.
Maybe not.
Kinda heat.
Because if it's turned on, no, then the temperature will
Yeah.
affect the wood. So these are the coats of mail. I had one of my students do her work on coats of mail, and I encouraged her to do her work in Spain. So this is a primary list that she did, and you can see that of 15 coats of mail that she was able to identify, 13 out of 15 are in Spain. And she took very good pictures of these coats of mail. I'll show them to you later on. This is the armor of a Datu of Iligan, who was killed in battle in 1830 something, I think 1837. And curiously, on the picture to the right, he was given a spear from the Carolinas Islands. So again, you know, there's this mixed match of artifacts. That's an interesting spear because the prongs of the spear are lined with sharp teeth. And I don't know if we have that kind of art form or work that kind of form in the Philippines. So anyway, that specific armor was taken in battle, and this is the card that documents the taking of the items, including where the bullet that hit him, that killed him, can be found in the armor and the shield and the helmet. So it's in bloody detail, it's here. And this is the letter documenting its transfer from Iligan to Cadiz to Madrid. So you can trace the transfer up to the Army Museum. So if you're from Mindanao, you're going to cry because you might know who this person is from Iligan. So this, just to give you an idea of the beautiful coats of mail that they have there in the Anthropology Museum. So this is an example of a study which more people should be doing. And also from the Anthropology Museum with brass and bronze plates, Carabao horn and brass chainmail, quite intricate. Carabao horn and brass chainmail from the Army Museum, and this one has a year 1871. In Sulu. This one is 1858, 1853. Carabao horn and brass.
Oh, there's the name of the Datu.
I don't know if that's really the name because there's a place. This was a big battle in over Kota Daniel. Kota Daniel. So I think this was taken from Kota Daniel. And again, all these shields just stacked up there in the museum. These are Mindanao. You know, those with the 3 prongs, those are Cordillera, and those with the bosses on the right, lower right, those are from Mindanao. And here's a page of the catalog in the Ethnographic Museum in Barcelona. And apart from the war items, they also have reconstructions, models of the port of Cavite, of the Navy. This is totally bombed in the war, so this is the only 3-dimensional object we have of this port. And this is a clock made by the people from a certain regiment, engineers, and then given. So this even shows that clocks were being made in the Philippines. We know that the big clocks in the churches were made in the last quarter of the 19th century. Here's a nice, smaller pendulum clock made on the side. So, shall we have questions or afterwards?
Yeah, we can have questions. I'm a bit of a break.
Yes.
So, sir, I noticed that a number of them were collected in the 1800s. Some of them right after the battles, at least according to the write-up. Why were they collecting them? I mean, why load a heavy cannon onto a ship and send it half a world away?
Well, for the cannon, they obviously took them away so that they could not be used again in battle. I know that many cannon were brought to Fort Santiago to be melted into bells and other things. And I suspect, many of these Tausug or Maguindanao prisoners were brought to Fort Santiago as well with their families. Some of them were even brought to Isabela. They were resettled in Isabela, where there was no sea. You know, these were sea people. They were transported in the tobacco country in Isabela. But in my study, I have found some Islamic artistic elements on church bells from the same era, from the 1850s. And I had this theory that some of the prisoners were metal casters, and when they were brought to Manila, they were made to work in the foundries, and somehow they incorporated Okir or Naga motif in the church bells, and the priest would never see them because they weren't sent up to the tower. So I just put the dates together; they are matching. With these things, they were brought as prevention for to be used again. Others as souvenirs. When there have been cases where the military in Mindanao would raid the houses of Marawi to get the brassware. Recently. So it's not a new thing.
They recycled.
Yeah, recycled. They can be used as
For peaceful
ornaments or
purposes.
melted.
Yeah.
As
As bells, as trinkets.
metals. So there are many uses for this. Yes, Kylie.
No, I mean, I think they might well have been spoils of war as well. I mean, it reminded me so much. There's a small museum in Krakow. It used to belong to the Czartoryski family, and they came from, well, they fought in the Battle of Vienna when the Polish king headed it, and they took as spoils of war a lot of the weaponry that were used by the Turks, which I think was also incorporated in the study of warfare. So I might imagine that might have been one of the possible purposes to sort of understand the warfare, because I'm not familiar with the history of Mindanao, but when was it sort of incorporated into the Spanish crown? Much later, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Madras, there's in the Fort St. George museum, they have the spoils, parang trophies of war, from the British invasion, actually. So they have these cannons also, and then spears and things, and so it's dated to 1762.
So many of the bladed weapons were assembled like in a fan shape, because that's
how they used to display them.
Yeah, that's the way to display the things. And we have up to now weapons of Morolandia.
If you remember the old museum in Santo Tomas, it's exactly the museums that you see in this.
You can see the collection.
The way they display them,
Still like that now.
And they have little miniature, parang miniature weapons, no?
Yes. And now they use cheap metal for the souvenirs, but you can see that they were derived from this early 19th century or even earlier.
I'm wondering when the Filipinos, the natives, started wearing armor, because when Pigafetta wrote his account of the Philippines, the natives fought with shields. They never wore armor. It was the Spaniards who showed them about the use of armor and how they get protected by, and this is in the account of Pigafetta. So I'm wondering when the natives took on the manufacture of the use of armor in warfare.
Well, I think most of the ones that we have here are from the 19th century. I don't know. We can check Alcina from the 17th century because he has images of fighters. So we can see what were they wearing in the 17th century.
I know the Bagobos in France, the Quai Branly Museum, it's armor but made of like cloth that's like kind of hardened with mud. So it's not brass or chainmail, but it's more it's kind of like thick bark cloth. But they have
Probably pounded.
parang thick, but I guess lighter, not as heavy as
Well, Alexander the Great used silk armor.
silk.
Yeah, his armor was not metal; it was silk.
I suspect that some of that armor would have been prestige, like as a kind of gift,
Ceremonial.
like what they have in Thailand and that.
Yeah. The beautiful armors, they're never used.
But we don't have the documentation for that. We just suspect.
Yeah.
So people need to. There's again a call for this kind of research.
Yeah. Can I just ask, I mean, is there any way or is there any research conducted with, let's say, local communities so as to verify certain traditions of warfare or is because I'd imagine there is a living memory of or private collections, within families, but from these communities, from Mindanao, the mountains, provinces. I don't know.
There have already been serious works on warfare on the Philippine group, especially I think the dissertation of June Pilbret, warfare among the Bontok. That's a hefty work, but I don't think she had access to the collections that we are seeing now. That was done in the 1960s or 70s. Nobody thought of going to Spain at the time for doing it on the Philippines like this. Then recently there was work by Sandra Ebrada who extracted Visayan words of fighting from a dictionary, a Spanish Visayan dictionary. So there are different ways of hitting somebody with a sword. And she found that there is a word for hitting, slashing somebody through the neck, or slashing through the neck, beyond the neck, and slashing beyond and twisting. So there are 3 different words for that. She demonstrated that she had there was nobody who would volunteer as to be hit by that. So she had a Coke bottle and a martial artist to demonstrate how to hit with that knife or slash the person. And she compared words on how they describe their weapons. And there were more words for rusty or poor blades against good blades. So her analysis was they were really concerned about the usefulness of the blades, so they had to keep them sharp. So they had different kinds of dull, in terms of dull, so that they could know how to repair or how to keep these tools, these weapons, tip-top fighting condition. So that required knowledge of Spanish to find out the meaning of the Spanish meaning against the Visayan word. Hindi ka talaga makakatakas. You have all these Visayan words here very well collected, but then you have to find out what is the meaning in Spanish.
Okay, so do you want to stretch a little bit or or should we just keep going to part 2?
Yeah. Let's just continue. So, we have to go to part 2.
You have to move to the. So
This is mine. In one session, yes.
I was just thinking about the globos. Is there any religious connotation with that or connection with religion, basically, or Catholic?
I think they just are
Why?
convenient.
Convenient. Because I remembered, I mean, visiting some churches in Iloilo, I thought I saw some Taclobo as well, like being used. They might be a smaller size as well, but yeah.
They're
Remember evidence.
very convenient because of the
The shape as
shape.
well.
Many hands can be poured. Can touch at the same time.
Yeah, but some churches in Iloilo, they're dated 1800s as well, so yeah.
And there's also a caveat. There's something to think about also. When I was in Paris, I also saw some Baroque churches with these clams, and I said, "Is that Filipino or not?" But I saw an explanation that it was given by a French writer who had been to French Polynesia. So these shells are really Indo-Pacific. And therefore, those that are in Spain may have mostly come from the Philippines, but those in France could have come from the French possessions. I know that there are different species of clams. So maybe we should have a natural historian to further study these clams. What we're doing now.
Just make it full.
Need to. There we go.
Will there be questions from the Zoom audience?
For those who are joining us in Zoom, you can also get your questions.
On the
Can I ask a question by chat? Yes, you may. Jan. Is that okay, Kobe?
There's a question.
The question. So the question is, are the weapons mostly from the Cordilleras and Mindanao? Would this be a reflection of the conquest on the Moros and the Igorots?
Yes. Oh, yes, I'll answer that. Most of them come really from Cordillera and Mindanao, Sulu. Mostly lesser from Cordillera and more from Mindanao and Sulu. Thank you. So we'll go to the second part with more subsections, textiles and palm art. The one to the left is the flag that used to fly over Zamboanga. And then the one to the right, you have the flags of Sulu that were taken, I think, taken from battles in Sulu. And they are beautiful. You cut pieces of textiles and you sew them, applique on the flag. So these are both in these pictures of the Museo Artito, and there are many of these flags there. But you see that they are hung with many in context with other wars. These are tents that were used in Morocco, for example. So it's going to be a jumble. You have to look at every caption to find out which is Filipino, which is from another country. So these are the photocopies of the accession records from the Museo Naval. Beautiful, beautiful flags. But I did not see them on display there. Just to give you an idea of the different kinds of flags they have. And this is an, I couldn't get a better picture of the flag here. It's here in this glass. It's here in the glass case on the lower part of the picture. That entire glass case is occupied by a huge flag, which is taken from the court of the Sultan of Sulu in 1851. So I think it's too fragile to put up. And from the flags, we have the textiles from pineapple, husi, etc. And what is also sad for me, you know, these are so beautiful and they can't be seen again by Filipinos. And these are just not samples of cloth, they're schemes, rolls of cloth. These are really brought to the 1887 exposition. And some of them come from places like Tanay. We never know of the weaving traditions of Tanay Rizal. No? It's traffic there. But look at these collections gives us an entirely different view of what was the Philippines. This is wrong. It's not a chasuble, but a surplice. Heavily embroidered surplice donated by Felipe Agoncillo from Taal, Batangas. So here you can see the detailed, splendid workmanship. And this is in the Museo de America. So it's again, it was just brought to me when I asked to see what Philippines thinks they had.
So these were all in storage?
Yes.
Amazing.
Nakakayak talaga.
Agoncillo donated it?
Yes, yeah. It's also in the catalog.
Museo de America? The precursor or whatever.
I think to the government, and then the government just distributed among mga museums. Because the Museo de America is a relatively newer museum after the Anthropology Museum. This is the Katipunan flag, which has never been published. No, we don't know about it in any Katipunan history. And these are the liturgical vestments. They may look very Chinese, but the provenance is Philippine, and it seems that they may have also been made in the Philippines. This is interesting because that there were a set of chasubles donated by Francisco Diaz de Durana. The collection is dated 1805, but looking at the catalog description, they were sent from Manila in the late 18th century. So they just through a series of wills, when the donee passed away, the collection went on to another collection. Eventually ended up in the Diocesan Museum in Bilbao. Because I worked as an archivist in UST, it's like a deja vu. I know this person. I have come across Francisco Diaz de Durana in the archives, and he also donated a lot of books to the rare book section of UST. He had a personal staff there. So it's very interesting to, after years of doing this work, then you start to put things together very slowly. Seeing my Bilbao, I also went to Bilbao because we know we have the chorizo de Bilbao, di ba? So I went to
Really
Bilbao.
non-existent.
Do you have chorizo de Bilbao? No, we don't have it.
Bilbaonas do not know.
We don't know
chorizo de
about it.
Bilbao.
Oh.
We're the ones who called it chorizo because it came from Bilbao.
But I just had to ask. And they say queso Salamanca. But in any case, I was going to Bilbao, and I told a friend I'm going to Bilbao, and then that friend said, "You're going to Bilbao? There's nothing to see in Bilbao." Well, and I found also 2 Juan Luna paintings in Bilbao. So, it's all a matter of perception. This one is in La Coruña. So the shirt on the left is obviously Cordillera. I think it may be Gadang. But there's one on the right. It says it's Gaban de Guerra Filipina. And I don't know if it's really used in the Philippines, and it looks relatively new. It looks more like the style is 18th century. But I don't know if it was really used in the 18th century. So this is, again, one of those questions. When you look for Philippine art in Spain or any other country, you are going to be confronted with questions of distinguishing Filipino from non-Filipino.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah,
Something like that.
Oh,
I think Sandra is there. on,
let's ask her that.
We're gonna ask her.
So this is an interesting mat, a banig, no? And how it's dated 1793 to 1806. How do we know that? Because it was donated by a relative, by the governor of Manila, Rafael Maria Aguilar, who ruled between 1806. So you see quasi-rococo elements in the banig. So this is really the earliest known banig that we have. And it's preserved in a nunnery in Ecija. We call it Ecija, not Ecija, but in proper Spanish, Ecija, on accent on the first syllable. Ecija.
It's very fine, no?
Yeah,
Very
it is
fine.
very
It's
fine.
so
And
thin.
that's just a detail. That's of a bigger mat.
But the design is non-traditional design, so this must have been ordered.
Never to- What is that? Is that a lion?
It's kind of a
It looks like a.
What animal is
Probably
that?
a lion.
It's a lion or something.
yeah. And then you can even compare the pearls, so that with
Yeah.
Mocair, Wrigley. So we really have to study art forms and get dated artifacts to put up a better art history of the Philippines. Before Juan Luna. You only know Juan Luna and above, no? But before that, wala. So anyway, again, this is a small church of San Gil in Burgos, where I found a Taclobo, and there was a table, and then they have this big tapestry or carpet, which they say came from the Philippines. So again, I wasn't able to get a good photograph of it. This one comes from the Franciscan convent in Avila, and they call it the Terreno de los Filipinos or de los Alcantarinos. The Alcantarines were a more strict branch of the Franciscans, like the Recollects or the Augustinians. Still, they were able to come up with this very rich set of vestments.
Is that silk?
It's silk. And by style, it's 18th century. And this is part, they have many of them. And this one, that's just a detail of the surplice. And dalmatic, this is a dalmatic. The dalmatic is worn by the assistant to the parish, to the priest. It's not just worn by the priest, this is by an assistant to the priest. So you can imagine what the priest would wear, no? So again, the one who told me, Father Cayetano Sanchez, said they don't know if it's really Filipino, but by tradition, it has been called de los Filipinos. And they only put it out when I went there. So you can see me taking the picture on the upper right. That's me.
It might be a good area of research, researching on the flowers, the leaves and things,
Yes.
because some of them look very foreign. So that's an area that could be studied probably, on the designs.
So calling out people there. This is a rich area for study. This one is in the Museo de America again, no? And will not be shown. They only brought it out for me because I was asking for it. This is the chasuble in the 19th century, and you can see the fineness of the. Looks like piña, and then you see a corporal veil there on the upper right. So this is a whole set of vestments. I just chose samples. And this is a silk chasuble from the Anthropology Museum. I don't have any other work of silk that we have. Again, and this is not on display. I think because it's too fragile, that they only brought it out again upon request. This is an interest. I love this set. When I was in the National Library in Madrid, I came across an album of swatches of cloth presented by two teachers. You see here, Doña Felipe de Gailuan and Doña Sebastiana Baez, who were teachers in Lubungan and Dipolog, Zamboanga del Norte. They submitted this as their contribution to the exposition in 1887. So I thought, how lovely. And I was, again, my crying moment in the National Library Madrid. Who else will get to see these things? And when? So now you get to see them. Finally, well, I mentioned this source to our friend Sandy Castro, who's doing a work on textiles. And she was able to hound the library because on the first inquiry, they could not find the album. So she had to work through channels to get some embassy people to work on the National Library to ferret it out. And they found it. And this is what she used it for her book on textiles. This is just 2 pages, this whole album of swatches, of course, showing that they were really weaving a lot of kinds of, they had a lot of designs just in northern Mindanao.
Is that cotton, Vicky?
I don't know. Abacang, it's abacang.
Abacang.
Then we don't think of Dipolog as a weaving center. This is that woven umbrella in Santillana del Mar. Again, very, very Chinese in appearance. But then also we could imagine that the Parayan and the Chinese working in the Chinese settlement in Manila could also have done these things. This is what we call Manta de Ilocos, the famous cotton Ilocano cloth. So we have 19th century examples in the Army Museum. We have records of Ilocos cloth since the 17th century used for military uniforms and for blankets in the military hospitals.
Were they ever embroidered, or did they have designs on them? The blankets, do you know?
I don't know. I don't think these are really for military, I guess, or bandages.
Yeah, this is cover for cannon.
Oh,
Sako.
yeah. These are religious vestments from the Recollect Monastery in Marsilia, Navarra. And I'm showing this as an example of the field work. Most of these photographs I have chosen are field photographs, not the polished photographs in art books, to give you a feel of how you will encounter these objects when you are there. For this one, when I took the next picture, which is on the at the edge of the right, or the photograph, my camera jammed. And my camera was out of function for like 3 weeks before it could be repaired. So I had no pictures for Catalonia, for Aragon, Valencia, many, many places, Cuenca. So it was, again, you have to prepare for this. This is in the day when you used film. This was not a digital camera yet. So I just had to write my notes in the notebook. Now let's go to the next section. Precious metals, which are very few. I asked Doña Lourdes Techuelo if she knew anybody who would be a source for Philippine metals, and she gave me the name of Maria Jesus Serrano, who was in the Universidad de Sevilla. So I looked her up in Sevilla. She was a very gracious person, and she gave me these photographs of 2 chalices she found in Sevilla, in various parts of Sevilla. So you have one on the left, which is inscribed, made in Manila, Nicolas de Mesa, in 1712 for the Santuario de Nuestra Señora de Consolación de Utrera. but it was found in Santa Maria la Blanca in Seville. And the second one to the right, made for the parish of Mairena del Alcor by Angel Carmona in Acapulco, Mexico. But then it's also inscribed, renovated in Manila by another person in 1787. So it gets close to show you that artists' trades was on both sides of the Pacific. And I went to the first chalice of Santa Maria la Blanca in Seville. So again, you know, you have to transcend your fear of Spanish. So I said, this is for science, this is for knowledge. I have to get to the church and ask for the chalice. So I did, and they brought out the chalice for me. And so I took pictures there. And so I also verified the inscription. So I have other pictures of the decoration. This is also, so this becomes a benchmark for early 18th century silver in the Philippines.
Do we know who Nicolas de Mesa is?
Nothing about him. Eventually, hopefully, these are on the opposite end of the 18th century. These are late 19th century candle stands called ramilletes. And they come from this place called Hospital de Orbigo. The name of the town is Hospital de Orbigo, not because there's a hospital there. It's really called Hospital de Orbigo in Leon. And they were sent by a bishop from this place, from Orbigo, who became a bishop in Bicol, and then rose to become Archbishop of Manila. His first name, Del Gallego Orbigo.
This is very ornate.
Yes.
Yes, beautiful.
And it's interesting because now there is more material on the one who commissioned it, Bishop Orbigo. He was a champion of the Filipino clergy. He, when he was in Bicol, he assisted the Filipino clergy in building churches. So we think of churches in the Philippines as built by the Spanish friars, and I have disproven that there have been a number of churches built in the late 18th and most in the 19th century by Filipino clergy, the diocesan clergy who were not friars, but for Filipinos. For example, Tabaco, Albay, the tower, the church there was built by Filipino clergy, and also Sorsogon. So from the Bicol, he was promoted to Archbishop of Manila. And when he was in Manila, he also pushed or supported the building of churches in the Archdiocese of Manila. For example, San Luis, Pampanga, that church there is built by Gaspar Macalinaw. And the documentation is there in the Archdiocese of San Fernando. So this bishop must have been a promoter of Philippine art, I think. So it's interesting to find that in Spain. The catalog tells about his sending them to Spain. So again, that's one source of Philippine art in Spain for the Philippine material culture. Souvenirs and gifts from those who made good and sending them to their motherland.
Was this done by Filipino artisans or was it imported?
I'm not too sure. But
It's very Rococo.
the style is Rococo, and that style is, the Rococo style was current at this time in the Philippines. Late tayo sa atin eh. But I've dated Rococo pieces from 1770 up to 1810. So this is right. This fits in.
It's the right time. The right.
The unusual here is the I think this is glass and painting behind glass, which is very rare. But we do have examples in Baclayon, in the museum in Baclayon, Bohol. We have some examples. This is a century later, the bishop's crosier of the last Spanish bishop of Cebu, Martin Garcia Alcocer, and it's in the Franciscan Museum in Arenas de San Pedro in Avila. Again, I don't know if this is made in the Philippines or made in Spain and brought to the Philippines and returned to Spain. My guess is it was made in the Philippines, because if we could have silversmiths who could do very good art in the 18th century, why could they do this in the 19th century? although this is not as finely made as the earlier pieces. This one is made in the Philippines late year, 1895, as a souvenir to Governor Ramon Blanco, made as a gift by his men. If you remember the one Luna painting of Ramon Blanco, that's the same governor who was given this plaque.
Very Chinese, yeah. Parang ivory carving.
Yeah. Even the viewpoint.
Yeah.
Sorry for this. I was photographing through a glass window, but this is even finer. This is a very technically worked map of Laguna Lake. Lanao. Lake Lanao. Lake Lanao. Indian Museum. There's only one other silver work that I've seen. It belongs now in the Polinoke collection. Something like this, at the same time. This one is a card holder. I was told it's a card holder about this big. Made by Ciriaco Gaudines, commemorating an actor, a stage actor in the Zarzuela. This one is also not displayed. I found this when I opened the cabinet in the storeroom of the Anthropology Museum.
This is on display now in the museum.
It is there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You see the bakya behind it?
Yeah.
That's that they all together there. Open, oh my gosh. I guess, when the Filipinos show their appreciation of what they have, then they start to bring them out.
Yeah.
So, sugurin nyo in museum.
It seems like that's the only way to go there.
Because they really don't know. And they are asking, they're very open about what we can share with them about what we know about these things. They're very open. Now we go to works on paper. Of course, archival work, you also find a lot of these designs and drawings. So I'm just going to select those which struck me, which are unusual. This one is from the archives of the Augustinians in Valladolid, dated 1735. And it's rather elaborate. I said that it looks like El Greco, distorted bodies. The thing is, it's just a cover for a document to control the boatmen in the river. So I said, wow, such an elaborate cover for a mundane kind of document. But lovely. And that's again one of those things that you go through all these archives and all of a sudden you find this thing.
Can I ask about the paper? What's the material of the paper?
I don't know. I don't know what kind of paper. Again, that's another question. We need paper experts. And apart from paper experts, watermark experts. That's why it's important for researchers to handle the paper, not just a digital copy. Because you can only know about the paper through the field, and you can only know the field after hundreds of pages of field. So it's good. I was in the British Library this afternoon, and they allowed me to handle this very precious map. No gloves, anything. I don't believe in gloves either, no. And they allowed me to take photographs, all the photographs I wanted. They were very open about it. These are some of the earliest representation of churches. These are from the early 17th century of Tondo and Binondo. Spelled Binondo, I guess because of the Chinese, they were using the Spanish way, the Chinese way of pronouncing it. So the entire map is the one to the lower part, and then just details of Tondo and Binondo. Very good for dating purposes also. They so of course would come tumbling down in the 1645 earthquake.
Do these churches still exist? Is that beyond the church as we know now?
No. Because they fell down and were burned and rebuilt again several times. So, and even the convento, you can see that those don't exist either, that kind. There's even a tower there on the left convento. So I've been trying to track down also what are the 17th century churches in the Philippines. It's a very, very slow process. I love this also. This is from the Archivo General de Indias. It's dated 1745. On the land in Binyan. There was a conflict. If you know, there was in the 1740s, there was a peasant revolt led by the people in Silang versus the people in the haciendas in Calamba, Binyan, Santa Rosa area. It was rather a big rebellion, and the volumes of documentation in the archives, including in UST. But I was happy to find this map purporting to show claims of various people in the land in the AGI. And on the small white area to the lower left, that would be Enchanted Kingdom now, if you know your place. So you can imagine now. That's big land now. And these are just details of that. So you see again, I think these are Filipino artists. And these are the forerunners of what we call letras y figuras. Letras y figuras in the 1850s. Now this is 1745. And you see the guy fighting a sea monster in red pants.
Yeah.
So we have a colleague who's also doing his studies on red Cherokees in New York. So
Well, the peasants in the Philippines until the 60s used to wear red, they call it kundiman.
Kundiman pants. So we have here solid proof of that.
Would it be related to the dye available on the land?
I think the most dye was, well, if you need to talk to Cherokees on, red had a symbolic color. And it was kind of difficult to extract red dye versus the other dyes. I would know of indigo. Indigo seems to have been easier to produce. And I know that indigo was used for houses, to color houses. We had very colorful houses, not just white houses. And so the one to the right, I don't know what that person is holding.
Yeah, the L.
L.
The L.
But it's so
Yes,
It's
letras.
like he's like in a cloud, no?
Laguna de Bahia.
Oh, so very whimsical. You see even the watercraft there. So I think one point here is that the map can be read in so many ways. You can use the toponyms, geographical terms, but also the artistic elements. And this is from the Malaspina expedition. We know the Malaspina expedition for the portraits and the scenery that the artists produced, but there is this one house which I think is unusual, and I'd like to point it out because again it has kind of pseudo-Rococo or quasi-Rococo designs, and that's the same period, 1792. It's in the Museo Naval. The Malaspina drawings were broken up. So you find some in the Museo de America and some in the Museo Naval. And they have written extensive catalogs of the collection. Very, very important. This is the album of Jose Honorato Lozano, who became known for his letras y figuras. And again, this is one of those serendipitous discoveries. I was in Spain for the course on sources of Virreinal art. And I was the only Filipino in that group. The others were Peruvians, Chilenos, Argentinos, Mexicanos. And one night, the National Library presented to us a whole table of artworks from each of our countries. So for the Philippines, there was this album. And again, my kneeling and crying moment. My gosh, where have you been all this time? After that that epiphany, I had dinner with an ambassador, Philippine ambassador, Jose Maria Carreño, who later on had the idea of requesting for a copy of this entire album and printing it in a book format. So that book is out. So again, you never can predict what treasure you will find.
He had a collection. See,
Yes.
In fact, he showed it to me when he was here, when he was a consul here in. He just acquired it. That was ages ago.
He continues on. So
He's still collecting.
he's building up his museum in Cebu. So
He sold,
I visited the Cebu Museum. Love it.
I think he sold his collection to Ayala Museum. Di ba?
I
Was it
don't,
Ayala that bought it?
I don't know because he has his own collection
Yeah.
in Cebu. When I saw it, when I was there, it was being prepared, but you've seen.
He's
Recently, no?
it wasn't open to the public yet, but yeah, there's all the lunas there. We have a copy of this in the library.
The book, the
It was-
published book.
yeah, the published book.
Oh.
It's really beautiful.
So
that
is it a
helps, no? It helps.
Is it a manuscript? The original is a manuscript?
Yes, it's an album of watercolors, and it's also
Native
available online.
costumes.
Yeah,
Native costumes.
Yes, music, dancing,
Yeah.
architecture.
it's really
It's
amazing.
available online now.
Oh, is it?
It is. Oo. Kaya
This one, this one.
this specific one. So my students have been really making hay.
Oh, that's nice.
Oo, available online na yan.
Oh, nice.
The entire album. The entire album. This comes from their website. These
Mm.
pictures. This one is a document said to be by the last Spanish Archbishop of Manila, Bernardino Nosaleda, who appears in these Rizal movies, no, as a bad guy. So this is one of his documents in the Cathedral of Oviedo in Asturias. And it's interesting because this looks more like illuminated manuscript style, and to find it, they say being made in Manila, so rather unusual, very unusual.
But they also have in San Agustin those mga cantorals, no? That
Yeah, but
kind
those
of
are from the 17th century,
oh, that's
which is
right.
late
This is
19th,
late.
Yeah.
very late 19th. Just to show you some engravings, you may know of the Topographia, which is kept here in the British Library by Antonio Fernandez de Rojas, that shows you intramuros between 1717 and 1730. And it is the name of Hipólito Jimenez is the one there who engraved it. Now, Diaz Richuelo says that it may have been made in Mexico. This is how much he knew then. But since then, I have found 4 or 5 engravings signed by Hipólito Jimenez. And this last one to the right says Manila, 1725. The 2 other books that where he appears were printed in Manila also by UST Press. So it looks like that Topographia was most likely made in Manila.
It's a change, huh? And with a church.
Oh, wala kinalaman.
No? Walang kinalaman.
Well, after this, it fell in an earthquake, and then the war destroyed whatever was. So just to show you what the style was in the early
Yeah,
18th
during that
century.
period.
Sobra.
Oo.
And these are the engravings used in a book on how to navigate from Acapulco to Manila and back by a Navy captain. Printed in the Franciscan convent in Manila. That at the time they had very, very few books printed in the Franciscan convent in Manila. Because after this, they moved to Sampaloc, which stayed into the 19th century. So this is a very, very rare book.
Measuring these stars.
Also, the sextant and the astronomical values, and even the parts of the galleon and all its sails. So this is a very, very important document. And I saw this in the National Library in Madrid. And again, another crying, kneeling moment. Because there are only like 5 copies of this book. None of them in Manila. This is another engraving by another artist who used to be known as Laureano Atlas, but we have found out later that this name is Lorenzo. This was this is the only engraving of him we know. This was shown to me by the Franciscans in Madrid. Now, this is the one which shows the signature of Lorenzo and not Laureano. Again, this is one of those moments, you know, when I began my sojourn in 1992, of course, there was no email. I could not write people where I was going to stay. So every time I would travel, I had my maleta with me, and I would travel by train or by bus. And at the end of the train terminal, I came out, I'd look for a church. And inside the church, I'd say, dear God, please make me find a cheap and nice hotel. So the first church outside the train station in Cadiz was this Santo Domingo Church, a Dominican church dedicated to Our Lady of the Rosary. And on the door was that poster. And I recognized the poster. The signature was Manila, Lorenzo Atlas. You see Manila 1739. And me being the kleptomaniac I am, I would have taken it out of the door, except that it was a fiesta time. So, you know, October.
You should have overcome your your fears.
I asked, how could I get a copy of this? I said, you go to the Comité de Festejos, but it was a Saturday. And my trip back to Seville was on Monday. So I had only a few hours on Monday morning to climb up the top of the Comité de Festejos and ask the head there for a copy of the poster. And he was only so happy that here was a Filipino who recognized that their work was by a Filipino. So he gave me that poster plus a program and other things. So because of that, we were able to establish that it's not Laureano, but Lorenzo Atlas. It was actually Beniting Lagarda who told me, "Oy, Lorenzo yan, hindi Laureano."
Laureano is the one who did the engravings for Juan de la Concepcion's book.
No, it's La Or, kasi La Or.
I see.
So it actually,
So
if it's the full name,
this
is
is Lorenzo.
Oh. So that's a major change now. It's now not Laureano, but it was named Laureano by D.S. Achuelo because she didn't know there were other complete signatures. They were all La Or period Atlas. Now that with this poster, the full name was and we have found a few others with the full name, so they're all Lorenzo Atlas. The Spaniards are not so quick in picking some of there are some Spaniards who use Laureano, but we have given a lot that it's really Lorenzo. So with this map, with this photo, with this discovery, I became friends with that chief of the Comité de Festejos. So this is 1992. In 1997 or 1998, I got an invitation from that person in Cadiz to go to Cadiz and present my findings in a conference there. All expenses paid. I was billeted in a parador, overlooking the sea, first class, everything.
How nice.
So really, how nice, no? So there are these are these things that happen as you go along.
Ricky, it's 8:30. Are we okay to go on? Yeah? Okay lang?
Okay ka?
I'm fine. Kayo, baka mag-break.
I will just say, you know, these are the last two.
Sige.
Kind of lengthy, the paintings and the ivories.
Okay.
So there has been a lot of work on paintings, so I haven't really, like you, so I have not really showed a lot. So they are available. So this is the painting that was used for our conference a few days ago. And this is in the museum in Vitoria, in Alava. It's there because Simon de Anda was from Alava. Actually, it's owned by the Prado Museum. And the Prado loaned it to the Vitoria Museum. It's a huge painting. So you must also realize that the Prado is so full of paintings that it distributes collections to so many other museums around Spain. This is an interesting one. The only one I know of, a Santo Niño, a painting on a scroll. with its bamboo case. And again, this is in Museo de America. So unless it is loaned to the Anthropology Museum, or else it will not be shown. So you can see the bubble wrap behind it when they put it out for me. These are the famous paintings of famous Augustinians in Valladolid. So very difficult to photograph them because they're on high places and I'm so short, and then the angle is so difficult to get. No, so they have appeared in better art books. But just to show you that this is rather an important collection of Philippine 19th century artists.
Do we know who Cayetano Pablo is?
I think it's from Vegan, because we have found paintings of his in Vegan. Some of the bishop supporters are by Cayetano Pablo. So again, the need to bring these works together. So Cayetano Pablo was much patronized by the Augustinians. Now, on the stairway, as you go up the stairway, there is a painting on the landing, which used to be read as Surgana. But then the late Jack Pilar said, he looked at the signature, it is actually Sukgang. So tell us for a Sukgang, not Surgana. So again, that when you encounter Philippine art, you have to look at the way the Spaniards interpret the writing, because you might have a different interpretation. This is the one luna, the Batalla de Lepanto, in the Spanish Senate.
Palacio del Senado, yeah.
And it's only available on December 8th when it's a holiday, and it's open house. It's again, a large painting commissioned by the Spanish government. And this one, it's a loan from the Regalado Museum in Cadiz, in the Ayuntamiento. So again, when you're going up the stairs, that's going to shock you. Here is a famous painting.
There are many versions of that.
Yeah, there's a smaller one, and the Lopez Museum also has a smaller one. This one is in a rather unknown museum in Merida. I don't know how I found out, but they have the portrait of Victor Balaguer, one of the close friends of Luna, and the one who conceived of the exposition in 1887. So this is his portrait by Juan Luna. Then this is a beautiful painting by Lorenzo Rocha, which I found in Cordoba in the Museum of Fine Arts, 1890. Very, very late already. Look at her bakya.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Lorenzo.
And I was here in this very museum to look it up again in 2019, but it was not there. And I was told that they rotate the paintings. So again, that's another thing to consider, that what you see one year will not necessarily be there the next time.
But it's in storage.
It's in storage. It's a sculpture. Again, this is a chapter that we hardly know about, because we know more about painting but not about sculpture. Because many of the important works are in Spanish. So this is by Miss Hoxon. Look at the way that her hair is tied behind her. Many of them were carved just for the exposition. So many of them are dated 1887.
Was he Pampango? Chris Hoxon?
I don't know. I think he was part of the group that worked with Tampinco.
What is she bringing? Flowers?
Tampinco is Chinese.
Yes, sampaguita.
She's holding sampaguita flowers. And this is by a Paiteño artist, Tomas Valdeleon and Vicente Ac. And then after that is Isabel Tampinco, St. James. These are in the Anthropology, which is really the best, the largest collection of 19th century works. This is interesting. Ciriaco Galdinos, who made that bakya, the silver carved border. He also was doing work in wood. And this one, you look at the boy's tears. He's crying because he has his younger sister, dead sister, on his head. It's it's a romantic phase of Philippine sculpture. Tico, Rosendo Martinez, Manuel Flores. So we really have to rewrite our understanding of Philippine sculpture, taking into cognizance these works in Madrid. The one in the middle by Rosendo Martinez was not on display because she was being conserved in the laboratory. And these are other works which are not on display but also in storage because they were under repair, or they were also being loaned from the Museo Reina Sofia, which is a museum for Spanish modern art, including Picasso's works. No? So it's interesting to find them here in the Anthropology Museum. On the floor. These are on exhibition, the miniatures. This is a beautiful one, bas relief by Ildefonso Soleda, the last Spanish Archbishop of Toledo. I think this is Camagong. Different kinds of wood, very beautifully done.
Would be a relation of the Alajeros and
Maybe. I think so. I think so.
they own Binondo, you know, the Tambontings, the current family. I mean, not Binondo, but what's such the
Pawn shop.
huh?
May mga pawn shop
Hindi pawn
yan.
shops, hindi yung palengke. What do you call that palengke?
Yeah.
Not Binondo, but the other one. Huh?
Chinatown. There's a new mall, para may mall, Chinatown Mall.
Yeah. Malapit sa Chinatown, I'll think of the name. They still own it. They're just renting stalls to people, to the store owners.
Hopefully they'll do a history of their family, you know.
Divisoria.
Ayan, so this is the last section on ivories, and then I just want to show this picture because of the nature of ivory, they tend to put them all together even if they're from different sources. So in this section in the Museo de Artes Decorativas in Madrid, the Filipino ones are the Holy Family, but the rest come from other parts of the world, like Goa. The lower two come from Portuguese India, Goa, and the others are from, I don't know, from other periods even. So I just show you the ivory and the collection to give an idea of how the context is. So in Toledo, in the cathedral, you have the beautiful triptych. Very rare, we hardly have any in the Philippines, but they're more in Spain. So it's like they were given as gifts in early time. And the identification as Filipino is mainly through Margarita Celia Marcos' work. So I'm not inventing these were already classified. The ironic thing is that our Southeast Asian neighbors will not accept them as Filipino made. There's this big exhibition in Singapore. They doubt that they were made in the Philippines, maybe in China.
Goa,
Well, Goa has a different style because you can tell it apart. But some of our neighbors will not recognize them as Filipino.
but did we really have a tradition of ivory carving?
Yes, yes. Even Domingo de Salazar, the first bishop of Manila, wrote about them. They were Chinese working.
Chinese carvers, yeah.
And
Chinese artisans.
And then in Parian. And then they trained Filipinos later on. So by the 18th century, it was Filipinos carving them. Both Filipinos, Mestizos Angles and Chinese. Here in Spain, they're really classified as Hispano-Filipino. So they really accept them as Filipino. This is an Oviedo, two parts of a triptych. You can see the Chinese style clouds. This is a beautiful one in Teruel, made of roundels of ivory, and the background is of turtle shell. This one is a problematic piece, but I think it's also Filipino, early Filipino or from the early Philippines in Barcelona, which has maintained its polychrome. The interesting thing is the Asian parts are the high head, the headdress,
Forehead.
and then the kind of Chinese eyes. those are the giveaways.
The hand is huge. Huh?
Yes, also that then the proportions of the hands are the body parts are not always regular.
Very good.
And this one is in Seville. Now, this is really Filipino because of what I call the suksok, which is the tuck in the back. The it's unusual. The scholar Margarita Estrella Marcos already remarked about the tuck in the back, the entalle, which was a mark of royalty she found among funeral carvings in Spain. So the royal ladies had a long train. So for them to prevent them from dragging on the floor, they would be tucked in the belt behind them. So we find this suksok only in Philippine images, and I gave the name suksok to make it local, and it has been since adopted by other books. And my point is that the suksok appears in the back, and the carver did not have to put it because we are mainly focused with the front. Why did he want to really carve a recognizable suksok in the back? And if you look at some sculptures, the belt here will be here, but the suksok will be below or above the suksok, the belt. So it was not in conjunction with the belt, but for me, the artist just had to put it there. I think the artist is trying to give his own feeling of royalty to the sculptor, even if the worshipper would not see it. It is the artist's private devotion to the carving that he put the suksok there. And you only find that in Philippine ivories.
But only the Madonna, no? Or
There's one Santa Rosa even.
there is even
Most, maybe 98% are Madonnas, and then 2% from other Philippine saints. This one is unusual. This does not have the suksok. So it may have been earlier than the period that the Filipinos were carving, got the training. But it's identified also as Hispano-Filipino. And also in Burgos, these crucifixes are Filipino. And in the museum, sometimes they will put captions that they came from a different chapel. So you have to know that they moved around in different places in the church. This one is very interesting. And Margarita Estrella Marcos told me herself, you must go to Medina de Rio Seco. Vale la pena visitarla. Because you see the ivories there in the case, those are all Filipino, Hispano-Filipino ivories, dated to about middle of the 17th century, very early. And why do we know that? Because we know that they came from as a gift from Paino, who was the Archbishop of Seville, who had connections with the Philippines. So these are some of those examples. And you can see that they are not really Western. They have Western aspects, but you can see that they have Oriental touches as well. This crucifix really is typical of the 17th, early 18th century Philippine crucifixes. So this is in Toledo. And we know the dating because the catalogs were made at this time. So they provide us with benchmarks. This is a crucifix in Seville. In 1992, I took a picture of that on the upper left. And when I returned in 2019, it had been returned to the sacristy in the Dominican Church in Seville. So after the Mass, I rushed to the sacristy before they closed the church and asked to take pictures of the crucifix there. So they gave me permission. This is a rare one on a lacquer, Japanese lacquer cross. And see here again the suksok in smaller versions of the Virgin. and St. Dominic St. Francis. They are invented in 1686, so that gives us a date for those items. Beautiful San Miguel also. San Esteban in the 19th century. Then there's a town called Babastan in Madrid, and the ivories there were sent by a relative of the founder of Babastan in the early 18th century. So they even advertised in the website of that town as Filipino, and they're used in the liturgy. In Pontevedra, I was just walking, again, killing time, and I entered this church, and lo and behold, in the main altar was this ivory crucifix. Pinoy ka na naman. Yeah. You can see also the way that the blood is depicted, and the kind of frozen attitude. And here you see Anonimo Hispano-Filipino in Salamanca. This is in Valladolid. They have maintained the polychrome. This is in the room where San Juan de Dios died in Granada. And there's a Filipino crucifix there. Elsewhere in the church are other Filipino ivories. This rather attenuated Santa Rosa. Yeah, this is one of those rare ones with a suksok for a non-virgin saint. Many other ivories. Yeah. Beautiful place. It's a World Heritage Site. Seville, Pamplona, Murcia, Cáceres, Avila. This is one of the Santo Niños in the Augustinians, and they had the date. It arrived in 1780. So you can see the difference between the early 17th century and then the 18th century, when they start to use hair wigs. This is interesting. I like this image because I also like to buy sweets from the nunneries. So I was buying biscuits from the nuns here, and then they asked me, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I'm looking for Philippine art." "Oh, we have come inside. We go inside the cloister where all males are prohibited, and they brought out this image of the Santo Niño. It's Filipino. So you can see the boxes of pastries behind him. So they just put him there, and then it's like after that, I think the prioress came. "What are you doing here?" And then the mother said, "Oh, he's looking for Philippine art." So we had a nice conversation. So it's just like that, no? And these ones are ivory from the Philippines fitted into wood carvings in Cadiz. So it's also a combination of sources. These are the patron saints of the city. This is in Avila by the Dominicans. And these are again in the Museo de America. Beautifully done images. Again, not for show. You see the bubble wrap behind them? Fantastic pieces. And this is a rare Saint Joseph with a crown. And the style, by the style of that crown, that's about 1820s or earlier. Okay, so last part. You might like to bring your tissues out because there's so much to do. And these are all from the Museo de America, Anthropologia. These are the storage bins. So lots of beautiful artwork kept in storage, instruments, domestic utensils, war implements, baskets. On the upper left, you see the pipes from Cordillera and other places. On the lower left, you see the lances and spears. On the right, you see peinetas, the headwear of the ladies. even skulls maybe taken from the archaeological expeditions. And they also sent coffins as well to the 1887 exposition. So they never left Madrid anymore.
They have so much in Spain.
And yeah, all these are just stacked up there. And they're very open about people to do research. It's just that it's now on our part to transcend our negative feelings toward the Spaniards. We were oppressed, we were downtrodden, etc. That don't do if we're doing history.
No, we didn't have the capability of collecting and storing them,
Also.
even now. Diba?
So we have to consider that they preserved all the data that came out with the objects and have written them down in their catalogs. We don't have that kind of practice, not as good as they did. So that's the last slide. Maraming salamat po. We have a lot of work to do.
Salamat po.
That's a lot for mapping. I think mapping is the last site.
Ayan, Christina, you have-
Sign mo na, Christina. Sign.
Yeah, so any questions? It's late 9 na, but wala na. Last one question maybe.
I have a question
Yeah.
about the paintings of the archbishops, I think, or priests at least in Valladolid. We showed several paintings, and I was wondering, these paintings, what signs are there that where they try to show the viewer that it's in the Philippines? Several of the paintings look pretty standard. There's a table, there's a black, there's the curled staff, but one of them had Capiz windows and a view of the street. So was that typical, or are there other like icons that try to tell the viewer that this is the Philippines that they're from?
That was unusual, the Capiz window. At that time, of course, it was not really the point to show it as Philippine made or any Philippine connection. The more important thing was the shield at the bottom with the biography of the personality. So it will only be there that you'll realize it's that the portion of his life was in the Philippines, and also the signature of the artist.
So I guess that makes the Capiz one special. And then, so I wonder, if I remember correctly, that's 1830s. Why then did he bother to have the Philippines painted as his background in the street view and so on?
I don't know, but in Vigan, there's one such portrait, and behind him there is a Bahay Kubo. That again is also unusual. I think it's by Juan Alceo.
So is this particular artist?
I don't know that Capiz. I can't remember now. You should ask Jack Pilar.
Sa'yo is an Ilocano name, Ilocano family name.
So I think we need to encourage the young people to take up their specialties, silver, painting, warfare, all kinds of things. We cannot do this all together. I mean, we cannot do this by ourselves. And what this project has done is to open up a kind of worms or a Pandora's box, but it shows you the wealth of Philippine art that we had, and we can do some digital, at least some digital work with it to make it accessible to more people.
Yeah. And it's sad because we brought photos of the Blaan, and there's a particular headgear now with feathers in it, and they could not recognize it. But they were like, because now they do the tangkulo, which is more like it's Muslim inspired. But when they saw that Blaan, which was more kind of like a special kind of headgear, they were like, yeah, it's sad that They could not recognize.
knowledge is going because there's no way of, we don't preserve them. So they don't see examples.
But then they were like, oh, maybe we should do this, reproduce this, because this will give us some kind of identifying, because it was special to the Balaan, because all the others had the same kind of headgear. So, yeah. But it's sad that they were like, wow, we've never seen that. We don't know that kind of headgear anymore.
So again, it's capacity building among the local groups to do in-depth work on their cultures, meaning also that apart from their own cultures, they should go abroad to look up where are their collections of their cultures.
That's what museums should do. They should fund fellowships. Bring people over.
Spain did. That's why I was able to go to Spain. Thanks to that grant, I was able to do that. But I don't know if anybody else has followed after me. That's 1992, and it's like 30 years now, and I don't see anybody who has really done that work. They were doing American period post-war because it's in English.
Well, because they have the funding as well. Funds come from the United States mainly. And even our written scholarship is mainly towards America because they're the ones who fund Rockefeller Foundation, all these forward.
It's true also, maybe also the language. The language also is a barrier, no?
Well, with the digital repatriation, maybe that can make a dent.
Translate them, translate the catalog.
Julie Blanco said, so, when I gave a similar presentation, a lot of people's hackles were raised. How dare they grab us of these things,
No, they're the ones who, they're the ones who collected and preserved. We should thank them.
So after all that storm, then Jody thought that maybe we can also work on replicas to be made. If we can't bring these things home, then at least you have good replicas of the lantaka, all these beautiful wooden carvings, Siliaco Gaudines, etc. The makia even.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing I found useful in my work was that foreign countries like Germany, France, they ask younger artists to interact with the old objects to create new, maybe a modernized version that can speak to the more contemporary market. So that might be.
Yeah, new audiences and new ways of presenting the art. I think if I were to present them, I don't think I'll reach the audience the way a younger person would do. That's why I'm also working with our younger students to incite them, ignite them, so that this kind of fire can also set them on fire to transcend their fears of going abroad and learn Spanish. They don't even have to learn to speak it, just to read it. Or to speak it, it will be immensely helpful when you go to Spain itself and you transact with the museum authorities.
They should just give us back one of those spears. They have so many.
The flags,
The
flags.
All right, so it's 9. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sir.
No, we enjoyed. We learned a lot.
One thing that struck me was the letras difficult. It is actually just I collected one with the musical or the boy group. Yes,
Super fun.
Oh, really?
no, because one of the songs that they have released was a porte, which is they have shown the letras de figuras on their logo. So, and it is about the Spanish era period, including the outfits, the Ilustrado outfits, the Mestizo outfits, which actually, showcase the era, the Spanish period. So this is like edutainment for me, which I really connected with history. So this is like a multilingual, multicultural group, and I'm really enjoying it because it is sort of edutainment. I'm learning, like relearning.
That's the way to present this, I guess.
And this is like the aim or the goal of this PAG group, actually. Yeah.
After I sent it to her, and then it's like,
Yeah, this is all
Number
your
one
fault, I
stand.
said. Yeah.
Stalker fan.
So yeah, it's really good because one of their logo was actually
And you can adapt that art form for modern use. No? You don't have to use a chino. You can use present day Filipinos using that style.
we need to bring back those silk trousers with the embroidery.
Baka masabi sa MRT.
We start the trend. Start the trend.
My son wears pants that are like that. He loves them. They have holes in them.
Thank you so much.
Salamat si Sandy Castro. Yeah, sige.
Dami cake sound.
Okay, I've seen that.
What? Sandra said something?
Sandy. Sandy.
Yes, that's also in sa Atlas.
Sandra. Red military jacket.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so his logo.
Yes,
Yeah. So this comment from super stand talaga.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah. Ipasido Polonos. Haba-haba ng pangalan.
Nikki, did you see this? It was
Yeah,
like
Nikki Sandy.
fabric was also woven from sagi nasaba from the National Textile Album.
Also those red jackets with
Right now.
Chinese buttons, no?
Big Chinese buttons, red military jackets. Oh wow, Chinese buttons.
You know, the one that you couldn't identify. Yeah. The ones with the detail, the blue and red ones.
Hindi ka nagtatanong sa chat, hindi na siya nag-chat.
Yeah, he did. Oh, wala.
But we should connect with him, this JM kind of, because he's doing work on conservation studies
Oh, really?
in Estonia. He's in Estonia right now.
Sandra.
Yeah, hi Sandy.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for that talk.
That's very, he's like the expert in
She
textile.
is.
She's
She's
really.
Yun naman. Actually, Ricky, I've been looking at those church vestments from your book, Discovering Philippine Art in Spain. And then I looked at some books at the Met about different Spanish church collections. And some of them will also say they're Filipino. But then I would see in other museum collections like a cope, it's made in Macau. And then another one is made in China. There are at least two kinds that were found in a lot of big museums.
Yeah, so it's very, I don't know, it's hard to determine.
Yeah, sometimes anything that comes from the Philippines, they'll say is Manila work or Chinese work.
Mag-train ka na ng mag-train ka na ng successor mo.
Yeah, we're getting old.
Hindi hindi kaya lahat yan.
Yeah, I was trying. There is a girl.
It's Cordillera and then Mindanao. Because the French are already subjugated.
Sige, Ma'am
They are
Sandra.
colonized
Yeah,
early.
thanks.
So, ito mga laban
Okay,
namin.
thank you.
I mean,